And Princess of Wales have rolled up their sleeves to give back to UK communities following King Charles's coronation. Joined by their children, it marked an important milestone for Prince Louis.
From Prince Louis's balcony antics to August Brooksbank's royal debut, we're taking a look at the highlights of the weekend.
Born into one of the most well-known royal families in the world, Prince Louis, the youngest of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, lived a life of privilege, ritual, and public love. Louis, who is well known for his boundless energy, cheeky smiles, and the laughter that once delighted a country from the palace balcony, is currently dealing with a personal problem that has completely upended the family. The child's emotional distress has necessitated immediate attention behind closed doors. How did this occur then? What does it tell us about the royal household's way of life? This is the tale. Palace attests to a severe internal conflict. The palace acted swiftly to clarify why its prior warning had frightened the country. Prince Louis, the youngest member of the royal family, had been going through a severe and extremely distressing mental crisis inside the family home, according to a rare and remarkably personal revelation from Buckingham Palace. This was everything but a straightforward schedule modification or everyday adjustment in royal life. Rather, the comment made it apparent that the young prince needed the cautious covering that only privacy could offer, as well as rapid attention and protection. The warning avoided using dramatic language and was carefully crafted. However, there was a clear weight to each sentence. The message struck as extremely serious even in the absence of dramatic specifics. The predicament facing the royal household transcended titles, responsibilities, and ceremonial tasks. It concerned the fragile welfare of a young person whose emotional condition had become a critical issue. The gravity was immediately apparent to both readers and watchers. The message acknowledged the difficulties Louis encountered and thanked the public for their kindness and understanding. However, the underlying meaning was evident behind the courteous tone. This announcement was neither cautious nor preventive. The family could no longer keep the issue completely quiet, therefore they had to make this disclosure. Their youngest child's welfare had taken precedence above all other obligations and appearances. This public recognition was unique for the royal family. The palace seldom, if ever, discloses intimate information on its children, so this is a significant change. Image, reputation, and decorum customs were not prioritized. It focused on integrity, safety, and empathy for a youngster in need. It was an obvious message. Prince Louis's mental well-being was of utmost importance, and prompt action was being taken to protect him from the constant scrutiny of public life. The country saw for the first time the personal struggles that even the most well-known royal family can face. A family had to deal with the ubiquitous and heartbreaking truth of a youngster experiencing emotional distress behind the pomp and ceremony. The message made it clear that Prince Louis's protection was no longer a private affair by striking a careful mix between dignity, restraint, and urgency. It was a priority that required national empathy and public understanding. The castle has provided Prince Louis with a unique window into something profoundly impacting him. However, how will the country and media react? Will the public be troubled by the weight of this revelation, or will it be viewed as a standard announcement? Let's reveal the startling information. The country is holding its breath. Reporters and media teams gathered outside Buckingham Palace minutes after the palace's statement, their cameras and microphones ready as the significance of the message started to set in. Royal communications typically proceed with meticulous accuracy. Statements are quantified, information is censored, and private matters, particularly those affecting children, are hardly spoken. However, things were different this time. To soften the news, there was no introduction, no meticulously crafted context, and no technical explanation. The lack of those customary assurances gave the situation a heavier, more pressing, and intensely real sense. The people also sensed the seriousness right away. The youngest member of the royal family, Prince Louis, has long been praised for his lively antics, cheeky smiles, and mischievous energy, which won him millions of admirers during public appearances. Viewers were struck by the stark contrast between the frantic tone of the castle and those clear visuals of a joyful, laughing toddler. A country that had become used to polished remarks and royal poise now felt a rare moment of weakness. Many were unnerved by the unexpected distance from the happy youngster they thought they knew, which caused a mixture of worry, empathy, and subdued fear. This time, social media, which frequently feeds on conjecture and sensationalism, responded differently. There were more worries, inquiries, and genuine concern in the comments and posts than there was curiosity or gossip. Even seasoned pundits and royal experts were reluctant to analyze the situation because they knew deep down that the family had only disclosed what they thought was essential. The hush that accompanied the statements had weight, suggesting that this was a personal issue of true human significance rather than a tale of insignificant royal errors or ceremonial accidents. The palace's message was so clear that it could not be misinterpreted. Prince Louis had been touched by something important that needed to be protected, cared for, and attended to right away. The royal household had finally admitted in public that the health of its youngest member had gotten to the point where it could no longer be kept confidential. Reporters, pundits, and the general public were all made aware of it by the announcement. The family was really concerned, the issue was urgent, and the child's mental state was severe. A silent understanding developed during those stressful times outside the palace gates. This was a unique look into the personal lives of a family used to keeping things secret, a reminder that profoundly human hardships may affect even royalty. The country came together in person and virtually to learn what had happened to the naive little Prince Louis, who was the youngest royal. But why is this statement so concerning, and who made it apparent that this was by no means a small matter? Let's investigate. When he speaks, Prince William acts like a parent. Unexpectedly, Prince William himself talked to the country instead of a royal spokeswoman. As he stood in front of the press without scripts, podiums, or well-rehearsed statements, cameras caught the scene. The seriousness of the issue was indicated only by his presence. This was neither a formal declaration nor a typical update on royal responsibilities. This was a father telling the world about his youngest child's personal hardships straight from the heart. William clarified that Prince Louis had been dealing with persistent emotional discomfort, a problem that had been subtly developing over several months of unpredictability and transition in the royal household. The child's sleep had become disturbed, with tense times and restless nights. His parents were worried and looked for ways to console him because of his abrupt mood swings, which occasionally went from happiness to sorrow. Louis found it difficult to explain why the world he knew felt different and why the house, which had once been secure, suddenly had a tense undertone. The moment that revealed the extent of the child's terror then arrived. William opened up about the question that had plagued him ever since it was posed. In his naivete and fragility, Louis questioned whether his mother may vanish, as he had already lost a loved one. In the midst of everyday life and royal responsibilities, a worry that had been subtly building was disclosed by those straightforward but heartbreaking words. The prince was remarkably honest when he said that at first he had not realized how serious his son's suffering was. He was largely preoccupied with the pressures of royal life, obligations, and public duties. Thus, he was oblivious to the quiet battle taking on in the family home's tiny nooks. But everything became clear when his child asked the question. William realized at that moment that Louis required more than just standard assurance. He required tolerance, empathy, and the kind of serene presence that no public service could provide. William addressed the country personally and begged for compassion, empathy, and self-control. He stressed that in order for the youngest member of the royal family to feel safe, protected, and heard, the situation needed attention, not in the form of inspection or sensationalism, but in the form of calm and support. It was a unique look at a father's dedication, a parent's vulnerability, and the personal human truth that exists beyond the opulent doors of royalty. The child royal's father made the announcement himself, underscoring the seriousness of the news. What specifically is bothering Prince Louis, though, and how has it affected him? Let's now discuss Prince Louis's apparent transformation, the disappearing spark. The vibrant youngster that the public had grown to love and recognize was gradually disappearing from sight. There was a noticeable lack of the mischievous spirit that used to light up rooms during family gatherings, balcony waves, and royal visits. Mornings that used to be full of vibrant conversation and laughter had become quiet. Breakfasts were frequently ignored. The once-loved dishes hardly tasted, as though eating had become meaningless. The gardens, playrooms, and well-known areas of the palace were oddly empty without his customary excitement, and the games, toys, and pastimes that had once brought him joy no longer captured his attention. However, this was not a tale of disobedience or revolt. The young prince refrained from acting out or expressing grievances or rage. Rather, he turned inward, withdrawing into seemingly unending periods of stillness. He spent hours sitting by himself, fidgeting or silently observing, while attempting to digest emotions he was yet unable to identify or express. He seemed to be carrying a great, unseen burden, an emotional conundrum too complicated for words at his age. This silence was quite disturbing to Prince William and Princess Catherine. They were more concerned by the complete loss of expression than the lack of misbehavior. The tension, uncertainty, and subtle fears surrounding him were all being felt by their youngster. However, he lacked the emotional experience and words necessary to understand it. Small anxieties, adaptations, and the demands of royal life, which the family had previously thought to be ordinary and controllable, now showed up in ways that required much more attention. They realized that keeping appearances and planning happy times weren't enough to achieve stability. For public events and cameras, regular smiles and well-planned reassurance were unable to soothe a child's inner discomfort. Distractions were not enough for Louis. To help him deal with feelings he did not yet completely understand, he needs thoughtful direction, a sense of security, and a compassionate hand. There was more to Prince Louis's genuine support than just formalities or royal ceremonies. It required recognizing his anxieties, observing minute behavioral shifts, and establishing a secure environment where he could be understood without passing judgment. And as the palace gates remain closed and the cameras slowly pull back, one quiet truth stands above all speculation. Even within the most famous family in the world, childhood remains fragile. Behind the titles, the traditions, and the centuries of history, there is still a young boy learning how to navigate emotions, change, and uncertainty. And sometimes, the bravest thing a family can do is not to stand on a balcony, but to step back, protect, and listen. Prince William's words were not those of a future king. They were the words of a father choosing presence over protocol, compassion over ceremony. Moments like these remind us that mental and emotional well-being do not discriminate. They do not recognize crowns or castles. They simply ask for patience, understanding, and care. Whatever challenges lie ahead, one thing is clear: the priority is not public image. It is protection, it is stability, it is love. And as the royal family focuses on healing behind closed doors, the world watches not with judgment, but with hope. We will continue to follow this story with respect and responsibility. If you believe that compassion should always come before curiosity, make sure to subscribe and stay with us for thoughtful updates on the modern royal family. Because sometimes